So here we go, Patzer's Playground, episode 18. We're going to be looking at it from the white point of view. Okay, so we have a Grunfeld. You guys know about the Grunfeld? It's actually a very popular opening at the elite levels, but it's very theoretical, so let's see how our Patzers handled this opening. Okay, e3, not exactly the most testing move, but solid. Okay, so this is a theoretical position, but e3 is not exactly the most testing move. It's kind of like a safe choice. It just defends its d4 pawn. It's definitely playable though. Okay, so do you guys know what white should do here? So again, white didn't play the most testing response to the Grunfeld, which is to grab the center immediately. So there are a couple of choices for white here. Actually, three. One is to simply take on d5 in this position. One is to play queen b3. The idea of queen b3 is to pressure this d5 square and also to pressure b7, make this bishop awkward to develop. And then there's actually the most common move in this position, which is knight f3. Knight f3 is actually a mistake though, at least theoretically speaking. It's regarded as inferior to cd5 or queen b3. So knight f3 was played. Okay, I mean it's not a tragedy, but even though it's been commonly played in the past, theory seems to indicate that either queen b3 or cd5 is more accurate nowadays. But again, I mean, nothing that anyone below 2600 is going to know. So castle, bishop e2, c5. Okay, so black's also making a play for the center. White just ignores it, which is perfectly reasonable. Notice that if dc5, this pawn's going to probably fall after knight a6 or something. And then if you try, or maybe dc4 first, and then knight a6, or knight d7. So no rush. Okay. So white has probably played this opening a bit lackluster already. How should he recapture this pawn? Three choices. Right. So, given that white has played this way, he pretty much has to take with the pawn and accept an isolated pawn. In principle, this actually scores very well for black. Black actually scores 59% from this position, which is good. Anything over like 46% for black is considered great. So scoring 59% is excellent. So the point is, by taking with the pawn, we open up this bishop. And yes, we do have to accept an isolated pawn. So at some point, this exchange will occur. Either d takes c4 or c takes d5. But the point is, white gets some active pieces. And it's not so easy to exploit this isolated pawn. So, okay. Pawn takes would have been better. But white wanted to not give himself an isolated pawn, so he took with a knight. Which makes sense, but this is actually worse, because after knight c6, some pressure is being put on white's position. So what should white play here? So in this position, white kind of should go for a forcing line here, which is to take a bunch on d5, play bishop f3, and then take on c6 and play queen a4. So notice that what's happening here? Well, white has successfully managed to ruin black's pawn structure, but the problem in these types of positions is that piece activity matters much more than pawn structure. So if you notice the difference in the bishops, this one and this one are about the same. You know, this one's on this guy, this one's on this guy. But the real difference is this guy versus this guy. And the difference is pretty clear. This guy is pretty much never getting out, at least in the foreseeable future, because it's babysitting this pawn. And this guy has free reign to go wherever it wants. So even though black's pawn structure looks a bit worse, and indeed it is, black actually scores quite well from this position, 58%. So it's kind of a trade-off between dynamism of the bishops versus the pawn structure. And here the dynamism of the bishops is the outweighing factor. But okay, white didn't do that and played knight takes c6. Okay, so after bc6, now again, notice how many center pawns does black have? And how many center pawns does white have? So already it's 2-1, which means black has a central superiority, which is usually not standard for the Grunfeld, at least from white's point of view. And notice that also black can use this half-open b-file to attack down. So the fact that these pawns are, the fact that this pawn is isolated actually is not a hindrance to black. It's actually helping him because it gives him this half-open file. And again, notice the difference in the bishops, the queenside bishops. This guy has much more potential for mobility than, say, this guy. Yep, and also this guy is probably better than, say, this guy. So, okay, in this position, it's already uncomfortable for white. Let's put it that way. Black's definitely won the opening, but what should white play here? So white already has to start making some somewhat artificial moves to kind of fix his position. But okay, I mean, ideally he'd like to move his bishop somewhere, he'd like to move his queen somewhere, he'd like to move his rook. So he's going to kind of take care of all three of these with one fell swoop. So he plays queen a4. The idea is you're attacking this guy, but you really want to bring your rook here, and you want to bring your bishop out. But to bring your bishop out, you need to defend this pawn. So the idea is like queen a4, queen b6. You play like queen a3 here. So again, you're getting another tempo. And the queen is actually quite safe on a3. The point is you're hitting e7. So black moves the pawn or moves the rooks, something. And then your idea is you want to play like rook d1 and bishop d2 and just try to get your pieces out. Maybe like a knight a4 to c5. Because the c5 square is a nice square for the knight if it can land there. Notice how it can't be bothered by a pawn. So something like this. And again, black is probably for choice. Score 61% here, but I mean, at least white is kicking. Okay, but instead white played queen c2. Notice that this square is not nearly as good because yeah, Yarand is actually right. If black plays e5, it's like a Grunfeld colors reversed. But notice that this queen is liable to get kicked around with bishop f5, which gains a tempo. But also this queen is not gaining a tempo itself by playing queen a4. So he's getting his queen to a square where it's off of this file, but notice it's probably not the most accurate square. Okay, so black immediately tries to gain a tempo. White blocks. Okay. So now, I mean, black can really make this opening a disaster for white by simply taking, take, and rook b8. And now notice this bishop is stuck. So something like rook d1, e6, b3, knight e4, bishop b2, queen f6, knight e4, queen b2, knight c5, and rook fd8. We got a real nice bishop here. Central pawn control, and these rooks are better than white's rooks. So black should be better in this position. But, okay. Black played bishop d7, which is kind of weird. Like, why would you play bishop f5 to play bishop d7, right? And now white is actually doing decently because he gets another tempo to kind of free his game. So a move like h3, the idea of h3 is to kind of keep pieces out of g4. So no knight g4, e5 ideas, no bishop g4 ideas. Or rook d1, just to get the rook on the d file would make sense. Okay, but white plays b4. Okay, so what do we think of this move? What do we think of this move, b4? Well, it looks like white's trying to get something going on the queen side, but it's actually misguided. So, I mean, it's reasonable to want to get the bishop out, right? And maybe get the bishop out via this diagonal. But the problem is that you're kind of reducing your options at the very least, right? So, okay, if you play b3 right away, you have the option of maybe putting your bishop on a3 and hitting this pawn, which is actually making a lot of sense, because also targeting the c5 square is important in some cases. But by putting your pawn on b4, you're kind of weakening your control of this square, and in addition, you're blocking a potential diagonal for your bishop. So, okay, if you wanted to commit to pushing your b pawn, a move like b3 makes more sense. And again, you are weakening the diagonal, but black can't do anything tactically to take advantage of it just yet. So, like, knight e4 doesn't quite work yet. You can just take with the bishop and then play bishop b2. So, but yeah, this is kind of like a misguided attempt to free this bishop, because it creates too many weaknesses on the queen side. Okay. So, black played e5. So what should have black done here? Black actually has a way to kind of exploit this move. So the way to do it is to take bishop f5. Now this queen is real awkward. So it goes to b3, say, and now a5. Point is, we're trying to get rid of this pawn and exchange it for this pawn. Makes sense, right? Because this pawn is stronger than our a5 pawn because it's not isolated. This one is. So one of the things that helps relieve black of his pawn weaknesses is if he can exchange them. And then so if these two pawns get exchanged, then this one is really no worse than this one. And again, black's bishops are monsters. So bishop f5 to gain a tempo makes sense before a5. But I mean, I don't think a5 was bad. But okay, so just to show you a little bit further, bishop a3, now this cute move a4. So the point is that after knight a4, knight e4, and now all of a sudden this knight's coming into d2. So after rook a d1, simply knight d2. And this queen is actually completely trapped, if you can believe it. The queen is actually trapped. So white is actually forced to take here, and black is up the exchange. Not often you see a queen trapped on b3 by his own pieces and two bishops. A very unique position. But yeah, I think black could have almost forced this in a way. And so yeah, here obviously black's better. Okay, but instead black played e5. And okay, it looks like black's doing something concrete in the center, but actually he's kind of just blocking his own bishop a bit. So white should actually be okay after this move. So sometimes you have to strike when the iron is hot. This was one of those instances. Okay, bishop b2 makes sense. e4, bishop b2, queen e7. Okay. So, what is black's threat? This is a question you guys should ask yourself every move, but sometimes it's more important than others. So what is black threatening here? Yeah, so black is threatening to take on b4. It's not exactly poisoned, but it's a pawn we don't want to avoid losing. Okay, so how should we defend that pawn? We should try to do it in a way that doesn't kind of waste the tempo. By that I mean we should try to do it in a way in which we're actually making a useful move. So can we make a useful move to defend that pawn? It's not necessarily offense, but we're not wasting a tempo is what's important. So does anyone see a way we can defend that pawn cleverly? So you guys are being too direct. You need to be more clever. So the best move here would actually be to play rook a b1. The point is, your rook wants to be on this file anyway, because it's very possible that this file will open at some point if you play, say, a4 and b5. And the point is, if queen takes b4, now we have knight takes d5. And now we're winning. So that would have been the correct choice. But white played a4. Okay. This move's actually okay too. It makes sense. So you guys see what the point is? So if queen takes b4, what does white plan to play? Well, white simply plans to play bishop a3 and win the exchange. Yep. So black didn't do that. Black played rook fc8, bishop a3. Okay. So this move is again misguided, because unfortunately this bishop is needed on this diagonal. And why is that? Well, now we can play pawn takes pawn. And if bishop takes pawn, notice that knight d5 is really rough, right? Because we got this going, we got this going, we got this going. If he takes, we take back and we have a pin still. We got this going. So if he tries b5, now queen e5, moving the queen and attacking this guy. And now if say bishop b2, now black has this move knight g4, which lo and behold threatens checkmate. So bishop takes g4, bishop takes g4, and this should be very good for black. Just up a pawn, and two bishops are super dangerous. And this pin is still in effect. And notice that you can't even play knight d1, I can just take it, because the queen hangs. Okay, but black played bishop g4. Instead, what should white play here? Keeping the previous variation in mind. So sometimes you have to defend, but you want to make sure you defend well. So what's the best defense here? So what were the problems, right? The problems were this. The problem was this. Problem is this guy being undefended in some lines. So for example, rook a e1, now this a3 guy is undefended, so you can never play b5. So the right answer is actually to simply play queen b3. And now you're stepping off of the c file, you're defending the c pawn, you're defending the bishop, and now you're prepared to move this rook and get out of this pin. So it's a rather unassuming move, but it actually accomplishes a lot. It gets us out of a lot of dangerous avenues that are pointed at our queen. Okay, but white played rook b1 instead. And now, what's the problem of this? I said we didn't want to move this rook. Why didn't we want to move this rook? Well, because now there's a pin that a5 would do quite nicely with. Because again, we're trading this guy for this guy, which means we're giving white weaknesses on a4 and c4. So this would be good for black. But black instead played queen e6. Now white should probably play c5 to protect his pawn, and then try to re-establish this knight on the d4 square, because then black's pawns would kind of be blockaded well, and white actually has a queenside pawn majority. So after c5 and getting the knight to d4, now white is threatening to play moves like b5 and b6 and b7 and just try to ram his pawns down. So all of a sudden white's doing okay. So c5 to establish a queenside pawn majority at this juncture would be correct, which is what he did. Take. Okay, so how do we take back? How do we take back? Yeah, we want to get our knight to d4, so it's nice to do this and do this. Good. Simple. Our Patzer saw this as well. Okay. So, this is a little trickier. This is a little trickier. What should white play here? Okay, f3 is bad news. f3, I can play knight takes e3 and fork you. So you don't want to play f3. Yeah, so on bishop b2, I can play knight e5 though. It's not entirely clear. I mean, this is okay, but this knight's coming to d3. So the actual thing to do is to play h3 here. So the point is, like, it kind of transposes, but the reason is, so now on knight e5 you play bishop b2, and you're intending to take here. So that's your plan. You want to take there. And if he plays here, knight d3, now you take on g7, and you play f4. And notice that you can play f4 now, because of the position of this knight. And once you play f4, now you can play knight d4 next. And it's much different than having this pawn on f2. So you kind of get time to play f4. So, but yeah, I think h3 is most accurate. But the idea you guys had is also reasonable, I think. So bishop e2, take, queen e5, threatening mate, by the way. So knight g3. Okay, so now he's kind of going about it the wrong way. Problem is he probably didn't want to play g3 to weaken his pawn structure, but now notice his knight's coming further and further away from d4. So this is why h3 was probably preferable. Because then you force the knight to e5 and there's no more mate ideas. So knight g3, f5, and now what should white do here? Black looks like he's launching a dangerous kingside initiative. So how do we counteract this initiative? So h3 still doesn't work because I can take on e3. So don't do that one. Don't do that one. And f4, I can still take en passant, then take on e3. You lose everything. So you guys are doing exactly what black wants you to do. So you guys are looking for ghosts and finding ghosts because you actually are creating threats by playing these moves. So both f4 and h3 are very, very bad. But the right idea is actually simply to ignore what black's doing and simply play b5. Because okay, if he plays f4, you just want to take and play b6 and play b7 and play b takes a8. So nothing scary. Alright, but white played queen d2. I guess he was a little scared, wants to play maybe queen d4. Okay, queen e7. Now there's no more checkmates in the air, so what should white do? What should white do? He's got to do the hustle. Yeah, 92, do the hustle. Okay, but he plays h3, 95. So now you're just basically chasing the knight to where it wants to go anyway. Yeah, not h3. Not h3. Okay, rook b3. And now where should this knight go? Here or here? Which one, guys? d3 or c4 for black? Nope. That's what black played, but it should go to d3. Because on c4 it actually does nothing. Like, it literally does nothing. On d3 at least you're hitting this pawn, you're hitting this pawn. c4 does nothing. Yeah. So c4 is actually away from where it wants to be. So the Patzer played that, which just helps white actually. Okay, so b5, this is a good move. This is a very good move because notice this pawn is now defending this pawn. And if the knight were on d3, the queen wouldn't be attacking d5, but now it is. So take. Okay, now what should white do here? What should white do here? Take d5. Wrong. Taking a pawn with check? How could it be wrong? It's wrong. Yeah, best move is rook takes b5. Because queen e5 is basically forced. I mean, you gotta stop this. And now simply rook d1. And now the point is, or sorry, not rook d1, rook c1, sorry. The point is you're threatening this. The point is you're threatening this. And so this is forced, and now this pawn is a monster. And my rook is super good. Super good. So I'm just gonna play playing this and this and this and this and this and this and this. And then queening and etc. Okay. But I mean, who can blame a guy, right? Who can blame a guy?
Check.
Okay, so queen d5. So this is good. It's just not the best. Not the best. We want to be the best. You're the best. No one's gonna ever take me down. Okay, so queen f7. Pretty much forced.
Check.
Okay, so he took. Okay. So we still have this pass pawn, which is good. And we're up a pawn, right? We have 6 to 5. So it's good. It's good. Alright, so rook b8. And now, what should white play here? What should white play here? So white has a strong move at his disposal. And the answer is rook to c1. Rook to c1. So rook b1 is fine too, but I mean this is not anything because I can take your rook and win a rook. But rook c1 is the answer actually, because okay, if rook takes, pawn takes, and now if you take this, I actually win a piece. because you can't both stop this pawn and defend your knight. So you pretty much have to play rook b5 here, and I just take your knight. Because if you try to stop it, I just play b7, and now you have to make a choice. Do you want to protect b8 or do you want to check c4? Can't choose both. You can't choose both. So that just wins a piece. And what black should do actually in this position is to play knight e5. Now just rook c2 to stop knight d3 fork. Knight d3. Now we take on a5. Rook b1
Check.
to get the king further away. And this is actually good for white because he actually won a second pawn. He actually won a second pawn. And you actually want to keep both rooks on the board if you can. So white instead took, which is not as good. Because after rook c1, rook b4, this is not as favorable as the line I showed you. Still better for white, but not as good as what happened before. So for example, knight e2, rook a4, knight c3, rook b4, knight d5, rook a4, c6, knight d6, c7, knight c8, rook c6, rook a1,
Check.
king h2, rook d1. Okay, this is probably better for white, but it's not super clear. Not super clear. Okay. Yeah, knight b6. You're going to trade the knight after the pawn, but it's hard for black to stop this pawn, or for white to stop that pawn actually. And the 4-on-4 is tricky. But okay, c6. So now there should actually be a draw here because this king can come in time. So king e6, rook d1, knight e5, knight e2. Whoops, not there. Just knight d3, knight f4 check. Take, take. Rook c4, rook d7. Rook takes c6, and now not here, but here. And then check,
Check.
here, here, check,
Check.
here, check. And this should
Check.
probably just be a draw. I'll just probably check you forever. And you don't want to go this way, because your king will be too far away. So you just kind of oscillate between these two squares. And I really have nothing better than to check you forever. Because if I try to like take this pawn, you take this pawn and it's dangerous. And if you play here, I check you here. And again, it's dangerous. But okay, so king e7, knight e2. And now black only has one move here. Black only has one move here. Black has to play king here. It's obvious, but only move that draws. And of course, why would black play that move? Why would he? Why would he? So now white wins. White wins. Do you guys see how? Do you guys see how? No one sees how? It's pretty simple. Pretty simple tactic. Yeah, so knight c3, good. Rook a3, and now what? Yep, knight d5.
Check.
And now, white to move and win. Yeah, just c7 wins. Yep. Okay. This wins too. This wins too. It's a little trickier though. c7 was much simpler. Because this goes into a queen versus rook ending where black actually has a passed pawn. I mean, it's winning, but a little bit trickier. So
Check.
check, take, c7, okay,
Check.
queen. Okay. So this is all forced. And the rest of this game is not too instructional. I just want to show you the end. It's kind of cute. The way that white won was kind of cute.
Check.
Okay, so I'm gonna fast forward to the end.
Check. Check.
Okay, so do you see what happens in this position? What white did here? So white basically plays any legal move and wins because black's in zugzwang. Black actually only has 2 legal moves, King C1 and King C2, both of which hang his rook. So E4 wins, F3 wins, F4 wins, G3 wins, G4 wins, H4 wins, King G3 wins. Even King G1 wins, by the way, or King H1. Queen C3 wins, Queen E5 wins, Queen F6 wins, Queen G7 wins, Queen H8 wins. Queen C3 does not win. Yeah, it's stalemate. You guys are right. But everything else wins. So fortunately for our sanity, white played King G3. And black resigned. So GG. Okay. So obviously if King C1, just take, everything falls, blah blah blah. Okay. So pretty much every legal move won. One of them drew, a couple of them lost. Yeah, so I thought that was cute. Alright, that one was a long one. Let's do one more. Okay, this one again is from the white side. Okay, we got a Siciliano. Okay. So what should white play here? What should white play here? Sibling. So black's opening system is a bit weird. So we can actually take immediate advantage of it. Castling is not best. Best is E5. So it's actually very difficult for black to find a move. For example, if pawn takes pawn, you can play this guy. Right? You guys like this one, right? Take the queen, checkmate.
Checkmate.
You know, you can even do this way.
Check.
Take, and then take.
Check.
And then take, and then take. You can do that way too. Well, Kig, they're always both Patzers, so they're both making terrible moves. But, okay, so if the knight moves, for example, I don't know, knight d7, you could just take.
Check.
And then check, and then take here, and you're up a billion pieces. If, for example, d5, then bishop b5, check. Knight f d7, and this is just winning. If bishop takes f3, queen takes f3, pawn takes pawn, and now queen takes pawn here, and this is crushing as well. So a lot of bad news bears all around. But white instead played knight e5. Okay. Can't really say anything about this move other than that it's probably the worst legal move on the board. Maybe the second worst legal move on the board. Yeah, it's not good. Obviously, he was just going for a little trick. Yeah, this is not a good move. So the point was, white was hoping for this, obviously. And then, okay, mate.
Checkmate.
Okay. But you don't play for tricks in chess, ever. You never play for tricks. Because they rarely work. And here, you're just hanging a piece. He can simply just take here. And then you're stuck. So don't play for tricks. And make sure you're calculating what's going on. Don't hope your opponent's going to play a move. because it rarely occurs that way. Yeah, was hoping is rarely a good, yeah, but you notice how many times on Amateur's Mind people say, I hope he does this? So it's not uncommon, but this is a kind of very stark example. This is a very stark example, but I mean, okay, some of you guys might be laughing and say, oh, this is silly, but you guys do this all the time, just in more subtle ways. So I just wanted to draw your attention to it, but the point is not so much, you know, that knight e5 itself is such a bad move. It's more the reasoning behind it. The reasoning behind it. Okay, so of course I didn't show this game because black played bishop takes d1. I think at 900 you can play hope chess, because what you're hoping for probably will occur. But after that, I think you gotta stop playing hope chess. But yeah, if White had seen the same idea and played e5, he probably could have won in 12 moves. Probably what would have happened. What would have happened is probably this: take, 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 mate. That's probably what would happen. But by playing knight e5, it was a bit too obvious for his opponent. So his opponent took, obviously. Okay, but the game hasn't ended yet. I mean, he's down a piece, and he's gonna have to play f3 or bishop e2, but the game's not completely over yet. Okay, so f3, bishop c8, d3, knight c6, knight d5, take, take, whatever, moves. Okay, some more moves. Okay, everything's fine so far. Okay, everything's still fine. Okay, black's actually doing quite well here, just up a piece. Okay, so I mean, black's up a piece. Might as well just take on d4, just take everything on d4, then play queen f6 at the end, should be great. Okay, plays queen a5, looks okay too. b3, b5, bishop d3, take, bishop d2, okay. So now, how does black to move win here? Black's done pretty well so far. He won a piece and he's increased his advantage. So how does black win in this position? Well, any of a number of moves win, but black can actually win almost instantly here. Black can win almost instantly here. So the right move is simply to play queen takes a2. And the point is, I'm kind of threatening unstoppable mate on a3. It's fairly unstoppable. So the only thing white can do is to take here, but then something else is occurring. Something else is occurring, and namely the fact that queens are moving sideways. So you basically lose a queen, which is not good. So this didn't happen.
Check.
You play queen a3, which is fine. Okay, king b1, take, take, knight b4, okay, getting frisky. Rook c1, bishop b7, trying to get rooks on the c file, makes sense. Rook c7, rook a c8, good move by the way. A good move. Because why can't he take here? What's wrong with this? This is what happened in the game, by the way. But how does black win here? Rook c3 is actually best. Rook c2 doesn't quite do it. I can actually, I mean, at the very least I can take this way, right? And okay, I have a rook and a bishop for a queen. But I think I can get away with taking this way, because I don't see that you have a mate actually, right? Like queen a2, I can play king c1. Queen a1, I can play bishop b1. Knight a2, I'm defending. I don't actually see that you have a mate here. If you play rook c8, I can play here maybe. If you play here, I can play here maybe. You can't play rook c2 because I have mate on b8. If you take on h1, I take on b4 maybe. Maybe. You know, it's not super clear. It's not super clear. But at the very least, on rook c2, I can take with the queen. At the very least. Yeah, I know rook c8. I see it. I know, I see it. It's still tricky though. But rook c3 is instantly over. This is just over now. Because now I'm just starting to take the bishop. And you have no place good to move it, right? If you move it to e2, now rook c2. And now I win by force, right? And you have no other place to move it. So you're losing control of this square. So this is over. Rook c3 is stronger. This is over. Okay, queen b2. All right, well, it's over. What should black do here? Sorry. I mean, just simple chess, right? Just take the queen.
Check.
Take on d3. And
check.
Hopeless. Okay. But here, black got a little fancy.
Check.
Played queen takes a2. I'm not entirely sure why he did that. But okay, so take forced, take forced. Okay. So somehow white managed to win his piece back. Unfortunately, he's still completely lost because 7 on 5. And this rook endgame is good for black, actually. I mean, this is threatened, for example. And black just has too many pawns here. But white did miraculously to save himself from that position when he was basically losing his queen by force. But okay. So rook c1. So black could, win a third pawn if he wants. Take on g2. I mean, whatever. Rook c3 is good too. Take, okay. Now, in this position, white had to play this move. He has to keep his rook on tabs of this. He can't allow b4, because this pawn becomes too strong. But he's trying to corral the pawn with king b1, king c2. I mean, it's a small minor thing, but after rook c7, though, b4, and now all of a sudden this pawn's a monster. So, king b1, h6, king c2, rook d8. Okay, these are all normal moves. Okay, so he's losing all his pawns. Okay. So again, white is beyond dead here. Beyond dead. I mean, he's probably losing both of these pawns too. And his king sucks. So this is pretty hopeless. Okay, so now black's just going to queen his h pawn and it's over. Okay, so I mean, white's just completely dead. Notice that I can get back with this rook in time. I can play e5 and rook f6 and get back in time. Okay, so king c2, h3, e5, rook e3, rook h4. So, I mean, just taking here is pretty simple. But g5 is good. I mean, white's still completely dead. Rook h5, g4, b5. Did I say black is completely dead? I meant white is completely dead. Unless you typed it wrong. But yeah, I mean, white is completely dead. Sorry. Black is completely won. Okay, so king takes pawn. King f8. Okay, now all of a sudden it's actually a draw. Now it's actually a draw. Now it's actually a draw. Because this pawn is actually real strong. So what has to happen here is after b6, rook e3, king c2, rook e2, king c3, rook e1, king c2, rook e2, king c3, rook e1, king c2, draw. It's actually a draw. Because the black rook is not too fast anymore. And I can always control these 4 squares. And of course, white can't try to win because as soon as I get my rook to the b file, it's just a loss. So this is actually a draw now, amazingly. Black wasted like 14 tempi disregarding this pawn, and now it's a draw. Okay, well, I wouldn't have believed it, but it happened. Okay, and now after g3, it's actually white has mate in 10. And after b7, black resigned. So there's that. There's that. So the point is now rook e3,
Check.
king c4, rook e4,
Check.
king c5, and now nothing else. Draw some arrows, ace rook style, and that's it. So white was won for all of one move the entire game, and it worked. So that's a fitting way to conclude this episode of Patzer's Playground. Hope you enjoyed.